Eagle Eye in the Sky is fueled by Gatorade, the official sports drink of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Anything that move, I don't care who it is. Let's go. Give me everything you got. Play fast, play hard. Let's meet these boys tonight in their house. It's party time. It's party time. Fran, here we go. Touchdown!
You are listening to the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Now here's your host, Fran Duffy.
That's right. Another week and another big matchup here on Sunday at Lincoln Financial Field as the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, continues. I'm Fran Duffy, and I think we've got a great show for you here on episode number 217. At the top of this week's show, we've got Chalk Talk, where I catch up with Greg Cosell from NFL Films to talk about everything we saw from the Eagles' loss on film to the New England Patriots this past weekend at the Link. Then we will preview this weekend's matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. Big matchup here between two of the better teams in the NFC, Eagles, Seahawks. A lot to talk about in this game, so Greg and I will hash it all out at the top of the show in Chalk Talk. After that, I will catch up with you on a player that has really caught my eye watching the Seahawks defense, and that's second-year defensive tackle Poona Ford, former undrafted free agent, guy that's making some plays up front there, both in the run game and in the passing game. So we'll talk a little bit about Poona Ford before we wrap up the show. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it now with Greg Cosell. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Let's get down to business. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Well, pleased to welcome back to the show here on Chalk Talk on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, our friend Greg Cosell from NFL Films. Greg, look, let's not. I mean, it was a tough one. Especially look. I shouldn't even say that. Defensively, there's a lot of really positive things to take away.
A lot of positive things on the defensive
side.
And
it's been a 3-game kind of sample size here for this defense where there's a lot of positives. But let's start on offense, where we typically do. Not as many positives to take away. And this was a unit that was very much undermanned going into this game. You know, you're down Alshon Jeffrey, you're down Jordan Howard, who they severely missed in this game. You lose Lane Johnson late in the first quarter as well. So three of your bigger playmakers are our best players coming into the game. It was not a fun film to go back and watch.
By the way, against a really good defense.
That's the other point too.
That's the other point too. So when you look at the Eagles' offense, given the injuries and given the personnel that's out there for them, it's an offense that doesn't have a lot of big play explosive ability, so it's an offense that needs longer drives. Yep. They obviously had one that was remarkable, 15 plays, 95 yards, but against a really good defense and a head coach in Bill Belichick who's so good with in-game adjustments, it's not likely you're going to have many long drives against the New England Patriots. And with the inability to really make explosive plays individually because just simply they don't have that kind of speed on the perimeter, it gets tough.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, I think you look at going into this game, a big matchup was third down, right? Eagles' third down offense, which was top 3 coming into the game, going up against the best third down defense in the NFL. Eagles 3 for 13 on third down. And when you're talking about how they have to play offense.
That's great against the Patriots.
Well, that's the thing. And so, because they came in, I think, 18% on third down. But I think if you come in and you say, all right, like this is the way that they have to play, based off the injury to Deshaun Jackson, especially with the guys that are out of the lineup, they have to be able to matriculate the ball down the field. A couple things here. Number one,
to do.
It's very hard to do, especially against a good defense. The next part would be that everything is magnified. Everybody's got to be on the ball. Any little
one
mistakes,
negative play,
it sets you back. You've got literally, you say this all the time, but you stay on schedule, stay ahead of the sticks. When you lack that verticality in your offense, the ability to create that 25, 30-yard play, and even when it's the 12 and 15-yard plays are a little bit of a struggle, that's where you say, all right, like we have to stay ahead of the sticks. We can't have any negative plays too often. I mean, there were penalties that set you back 5-10 yards. There were 5 sacks in the game. It's stuff that's very, very tough to come back from.
And even running the ball, I know you mentioned Jordan Howard, and obviously he would have been ideally a big factor in the game. Still, even the run game, you're going to have 1-yard runs against the Patriots.
Right.
And then you're in 2nd and 9.
Yep.
So it's a tough way to have to play every week. And it's particularly tough against a defense like the Patriots.
Yeah, I want to talk about Carson Wentz because I think he's a big topic of discussion, around the city and around the team moving into this week. Obviously not his best game.
No.
He missed some throws, and I think ultimately when you're talking about the way that this team needs to be able to play, as we've been talking about, every negative throw is going to get magnified because you don't have that ability. Everything is going to be on him. And you don't want as a coach, as a team, you don't want your quarterback to have to be Superman every single drive. That's not what you want. Unfortunately, that's kind of, especially in last night or yesterday. That's kind of the scenario they're in.
That's what the team is, and that's what the offense is.
Yeah.
If Carson Wentz does not play great every week, this team has very little chance to win. And he certainly was not great by his own admission.
Exactly. Yep.
He admitted he missed some throws, which he missed some throws.
Yep.
And obviously that was the kind of game you couldn't miss those throws.
Yep.
So, all you can do now is go from there. But this is the kind of offense with what they put out there. And hopefully Jordan Howard is back this week and maybe gives them a little more in the run game. But on a weekly basis, he's going to have to make throws that are there. There's always going to be tough throws that we can debate as to, hey, whether they should be made or not.
Yep.
But there were some open throws in this game that he missed.
Yeah, and I think when you look around and you watch the film of every team in the league, good quarterbacks miss throws every single week, and it happens. The big thing is now, how do you respond from that? How do you come back from that? Not just as a quarterback, but as an offense. You have guys, Ben Fennell and I have been talking about this over the last couple of weeks, going back last week, preparing for Eagles game plan last week, and, going back and watching that film of Super Bowl 52, and just what's the difference between the team now and the team then, and watching that game. You had guys, you had an undrafted running back, free agent pickup in Corey Clement making ridiculous catches down the field. Alshon Jeffrey making a ridiculous catch. Guys that were making amazing grabs away, down the field for the quarterback. Those plays aren't being made this year, and so I think there's some give and take there. You need the quarterback to be able to make those throws, and then you also need your pass catchers to also come on the other side and make some of those plays for you.
No question.
And there's a little bit of that going the other opposite way.
Great quarterbacks, not every throw is perfect.
Can't be. Yeah. They're not robots.
No. So again, it was one of those games. It was certainly a game that was there for the taking, and they just weren't quite able to pull it off. But I think, as you said, the defense, I thought the defense played really well.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at the defense, I mentioned kind of that 3-game sample. You go back to Buffalo, the first time Jalen Mills was kind of available, and you kind of look at, okay, what is this secondary going to start to look like? And we saw more of that 4-cornerback dime this past week.
And a lot of a 3-safety dime as well, with Ford playing the back-end safety, the post-safety. So they got McLeod, who in most of his tenure in Philadelphia has been the post-safety. He was basically playing in the box in that 3-safety dime look.
Yeah, so it was very interesting just watching this group. Continue to see a good amount of man coverage. The Patriots did have some answers for that. They ran some good man beaters. I thought it was interesting. We saw a good amount of bracketing on Julian Edelman.
Without question. They did a bunch of that depending, on the down and distance, obviously. So, I think they did some really good things on defense. I thought Jim Schwartz had a great plan. I thought he was really multiple with his coverage looks. They played a lot of different coverages. I thought he was really multiple with his use of personnel. He didn't tie it necessarily into the personnel that the Patriots had on the field. So my guess is he was just trying to show Brady and the offense different looks, different personnel looks, maybe just cause a moment of hesitation. Which is why I thought what the Patriots did to start the second half was really smart, which you would expect from Bill Belichick coming out with the no-huddle tempo.
No, we saw that early on in the second half for sure. The big thing, too, for me was the Patriots, and you look at the way that they were looking to play, the ball was out so quickly, so often from Tom Brady. I mean, you saw a good amount of screen passes, but also just quick throws out of his hand fast to keep the ball, keep the defensive line from getting home, and that was a big
their
part of the
O-lines
game
had
plan.
a problem this year in a lot of games, and Brady he didn't play particularly well either. By the way,
he did not. No.
He missed a lot. You could argue he missed more throws than Carson Wentz,
right?
But they won the game, so therefore, I guess he played better. That's the way it works.
He wouldn't. If you caught his post-game,
he was not a happy camper.
He was not a happy camper.
He was not a happy camper.
What did he have? 20 incompletions in the game.
Number one, he knows he didn't play well, and number two, this offense is not improving. And New England at this time of year is normally a team that starts getting better and better. And this offense is actually going the other way. And he did not play well. They still can't run the ball. But I think the Eagles defense played pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you had their only touchdown came off that trick play,
Right.
which they were not in position to score that if they don't have the missed tackle that leads to the 30-yard completion.
Oh, correct. Yeah.
So those two
And
plays.
it's funny because I thought Gary played pretty well.
He did. You know what? That's
Yeah,
the thing. I'm
yeah.
actually going to write about that this week.
Yeah.
Is that outside of that missed tackle?
Yeah.
I think a lot of fans are going to focus in on that play. He showed up more in
and
this
that's
game than
okay
any other
because he'll
game.
tell you that he should have made the tackle too.
No question.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I thought he played pretty well.
He did. He showed up
Yeah.
downhill. He made plays sideline to
Yeah.
sideline. I thought he showed up. Kamu Grugier-Hill had a really impressive game in this game. I think it was 3 tackles for loss all in the first half. Some created by the guys up front. I thought
Right.
Derek Barnett had a really strong game, especially against the run. So I thought a lot of those guys showed up on defense.
Yeah, no, it was a good defensive performance starting with Jim Schwartz's plan. So, but offensively, that's where we hope as we start to look ahead to Seattle, where you hope that, things can get better. Because, look, here's the reality,
Yeah.
Fran. When a team takes its best corner, who's arguably the best corner in the NFL, and puts him on your tight end on third down in man-to-man, they're telling you what the situation. We don't have to guess now.
Yeah. And when they didn't, I think back to the first third down of the game.
When they didn't, they bracketed him and double-teamed him.
So they bracketed
Correct.
Ertz and they put Gilmore on Jordan Matthews.
Correct.
I mean, I think that
But
speaks
I mean,
to your
at
point.
the end of the day, I've always believed, and people who've listened to me over the years know that I believe that coaches tell you how they feel about their players and opposing players by what they do.
Yep.
So we don't have to guess. When Bill Belichick takes Stephon Gilmore and puts him on Zach Ertz on pretty much every third down, except I think for that first one in the game,
Yep.
he's telling you what he feels about the Eagles wide receivers.
Yep.
We don't have to guess. This is not, us sitting here trying to say something. Bill Belichick has told us.
Right.
So, unfortunately, that's the way it is, and you've got to live with that now going forward, and hopefully you can work through that and we can get to a better place, starting with Seattle.
Yeah, and I guess let's get into that matchup with Seattle. We'll continue to talk about this game as it reflects into this matchup
Right.
here on Sunday. But let's keep it going with the passing game because I think it's really interesting. This Seattle defense, I think there's still that mystique, and it's not the Legion of Boom from a personnel standpoint.
Right.
Certainly from a production standpoint, they have not been that. Very impressive outing last week against
best
San
of the
Francisco.
season.
No question. Jadeveon Clowney was
Best game
all
as a
over the
pro.
place without question. So I think when you look at this defense, it does start with that front. I want to start with the secondary, though, just with the matchup against the pass catchers from the Eagles, because they've got a couple starting corners that I think most Eagles fans aren't really familiar with. I think when you look at these guys, they've got Trey Flowers, who is the right corner, former safety at Oklahoma State in the Big 12, and then Shaq Griffin is the left corner. What are your thoughts on those two guys, and then also Jamar Taylor, who's the nickel?
Well, they're left over from sort of not left over. They fit the profile of what they want at corner.
Yep.
They're tall. Good size, good length. I think they're beatable at times.
Yep.
And you mentioned Jamar Taylor. What's fascinating about the Seahawks, they're unlike any team in the league, any other team in the NFL, in that they stay with their 4-3 on almost 70% of their defensive snaps. The only time Jamar Taylor plays is on third down.
Yep.
Or in, let's say, 2-minute situations or end-of-game situations. They don't play nickel versus your 11 personnel 3 wide on first down or second down. They stay with their base 4-3 with Kendricks on the field, which is, I don't think there's another team in the NFL that does that the way the Seahawks do it.
So you just got done telling us how teams tell us what they think about their own players, how they.
They'd rather
So what
have
does that
Kendricks
tell
on
you?
the field than Jamar Taylor.
Yeah, it's to me was something that really stood out to me, and especially the other part of it. And Ben brought this part up as well. Watching the Seahawks when they do go sub package, you think and look, Eagles fans very familiar with Michael Kendricks. They'll take Kendricks off the field and leave those two bigger linebackers and KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner. Those two guys stay on, and I think that speaks to those two guys as being really one of the strengths of that defense.
Yeah, they don't play a lot of dime.
No.
They play nickel. I don't know the exact numbers. I'm sure they've played snaps of dime,
Right.
but they're a sub-nickel defense.
Yes.
And by the way, those guys are really good players.
Well, the two linebackers are very, very
really
good.
good players.
Yes.
But yes, you're right. It's interesting. They keep Kendricks on the field. Last week was the first week that Diggs was the post safety. They'd been playing the rookie Blair, who I actually really like,
him
and I
too,
think
out of
he
Utah.
can be a good player. But obviously, they traded for Diggs, and they felt that he was their best post safety.
Yep.
And he'll, I'm sure, continue to play there. And then they've got McDougal as their strong safety. They're pretty much a single high safety defense.
Yes.
Which means they play a lot of cover 1 and a lot of cover 3, the zone version of a post safety defense. So that's essentially what they do.
Yeah, I think when you look at a lot of the big plays they've given up this year, I think a lot of that you would put on the safeties and say, they haven't had great safety play. Condre Diggs showed up. They traded for him from Detroit. Eagles saw him earlier in the season.
Right.
He made some big plays against San Francisco. Some big hits over the middle of the field. He came down and defended the run pretty well.
He's a good player. I thought he was one of those. Obviously, he was not a media guy because Detroit hasn't been very good.
Right.
But I guarantee that the people that had to play against Detroit knew about Quandre Diggs. I thought he was a solid, really good player.
I was shocked that Detroit dealt him because he was a guy that when we studied him back in week 2, week 3.
Good player.
No question.
And actually played a number of roles for Detroit over the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's been a nickel corner.
He's been a nickel corner.
Yeah.
At Texas, he was an outside corner.
Right, exactly. I think so. When you look at this secondary, look, they've been giving up some big plays over the course of this season.
Yeah, too many.
Yeah, too many. They've given up 34 catches of 20 plus. That's middle of the road. It's tied for 17th in the league. 4 touchdowns of 20 plus, which isn't a huge number, but overall, I think from a coverage standpoint, they have given up some big plays. The question is who for the Eagles is going to be able to make those big plays in this game?
Well, and I think some of that, Fran, is a function that they've not been able to generate the pass rush that I think they thought they'd be able to generate.
That's a good point.
I think with Ansah, who's been in and out of the lineup, and when he's been in the lineup, has not really been the edge pass rusher they hoped.
They basically turned him into a sub-package player, inside,
Correct.
Outside, because Quentin Jefferson now is the starter opposite of Clowney.
Who's a good player, by the way.
He has turned into a nice player.
And even Clowney, they're finding out the same thing that the Houston Texans knew, which is that Clowney is a good player in some areas, but probably the thing he does least is rush the quarterback off the edge.
Yeah.
That's probably his least good trait.
At least from a consistency standpoint.
Yeah, can he do it once in a while? And people are going to say, oh, look what he did against the Niners, when obviously he just drove McGlinchey back into Garoppolo.
Yep.
And he's capable of that on occasion because he's a power player. He's not a bender. He doesn't use his hands really well.
Yep.
You think of those guys like the Bosa's who really know how to play off contact with their hands. Clowney's not that guy.
Right.
So now what they've started to do, which the Texans did a lot of too, is they move him around into what we call a joker position. So on third downs, he stands up behind the D-line. He moves around. They try to get him on guards. They try to use him in the stunt game, working off guards.
Kind of similar to how we've seen the Eagles use Jannard Avery over the last couple of weeks. That's some of the way, and just to give people a visual of, this is the kind of things that they've done with him.
And Clowney happens to be very good at that. He did that really well in Houston.
Right, exactly. And I think when you look at him, he's got. Look, I mean, he's a freak of nature from a physical standpoint, right? And he can win quickly because he's got that suddenness, that explosiveness, that quick snap to contact quickness that not a lot of guys have. But the technical refinement, the pass rush,
he's not
plan,
a great
not always
finisher.
There. Yeah, that's
he's
a good
one
point.
of those guys that can be explosively powerful right away.
Yep.
But he's not a great finisher.
Right, he's shown up at times over the course of his career. He had a great game against the Eagles last year, and against the Texans.
I remember.
He was very, very impactful in that game, and obviously against the 49ers in primetime, really showed up. He was but maybe the best player on the field. In that game. So I think when you look at Clowney, certainly a player that they are going to have to account for. They can't count on he's going to have a down game this week. They've got to make sure they account for him.
No.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of things they do. We've seen the blueprint for that. They did it a couple weeks ago against Khalil Mack. They completely negated those guys up front for the Chicago Bears. We'll see how much of that
Clowney
they
will move around more than Mack. Plus, they've got a very deep D-line. I think even though their D-line has not produced a ton of sacks this year, they've got a lot of good, solid players. Maybe not stars. Everybody obviously knows Clowney.
Yeah.
But, I mean, guys like Quentin Jefferson, who you just mentioned. Jaron Reed's now back. I think he's a good player inside.
Yep.
Green, is he in his second year from USC?
Green, his second or third year, yep.
He plays meaningful snaps.
So people know, they've done a really good job over the last few years of just acquiring big, long, athletic, versatile guys that have like that D-tackle, D-end versatility. Quentin Jefferson, you mentioned.
Green.
Rasheem Green. Nazir Jones, they drafted from North Carolina. They go get Clowney. Malik McDowell was that guy.
Ansah's that guy.
Ezekiel Ansah is that guy. They move him inside, outside. LJ Collier, they drafted in the first round from TCU this year. They're all very similar body types, big, explosive, fluid, versatile players. They kind of mix and match inside and out.
I think that's the Pete Carroll approach.
Yes, I think so. And so that's kind of the profile of these guys. But 20 sacks, that's 28th in the league. 33 sacks, they're 31st in the league on third down. I mean, that kind of speaks that they haven't been able to get to the quarterback.
No, and I think that's why one thing you've been seeing recently is they're blitzing a little more. They're playing more man coverage. They're trying to be more aggressive and challenging on defense.
Yep.
And we'll see how that goes. Obviously they beat the Niners. They didn't shut the Niners out,
right,
but they beat the Niners. So, obviously they view that as a positive.
Yep.
We'll see what I would imagine in their mind. They'll look at the Eagles offense and feel they can do a lot of those same things.
Yeah, it's they got some big plays. They got a couple sack fumbles in the game.
Yep.
I mean, bunch of things going back and forth in a rivalry game.
Yeah.
So certainly a big day for that defense. Let's go over to the other side. Russell Wilson's never lost the Eagles. He's playing at a very high level. Give us your thoughts on where Russell Wilson is now and in terms of his development as a passer.
Let's do it this way.
Okay.
They're a very defined team offensively.
Okay.
There's not a lot of mystery to what they do.
Give us the profile.
The profile is as good as Russell Wilson is, and he's playing really good football, their offense starts with the run game.
They are fifth in the NFL right now in terms of their run percentage. 46% of the time they're running the football.
And surprisingly, given that their back, Chris Carson, they run more than half the time with him out of the shotgun. Not with Wilson under center.
Right.
So they're a shotgun running team. Now, they still have some multiple run game concepts, but they're a shotgun running team, and Carson is your classic sustaining grinder.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he is. You watch the tape of him, it seems, we try to do pieces for Carson on matchup, and we're always, in a sense, stuck because he's the master of the 7 and 8 yard run,
right?
Which isn't quite good enough to put as a film piece,
right,
but that's what he is. And then the longer runs happen because he breaks tackles, not because they're clean, beautiful runs where that are beautifully blocked and there's a big hole.
Yeah.
Because he's a big, powerful man whose feet are probably a little lighter than people give him credit for. But he is a sustaining grinder, and he keeps them on schedule, to use your term from a little while ago, which is exactly what he does.
The two issues with him, it seems, so far through his career, ball security, pass protection. Seem to be the two areas where, that's kind of been the knock on him. But, he's been the foundation of what they want to do. They want to run the football. Rashad Penny, they took in the first round. Oh, he's going to be our guy. He hasn't sniffed it.
No.
Chris Carson's been that guy.
No. And it's funny because as good as Wilson is, and no one's questioning how good Russell Wilson is, but they almost play offense as if the quarterback is just a piece of the puzzle and not the main reason. Right. But now you get to their pass game. Here's a fascinating statistic, okay? 303 dropbacks by Wilson have come out of the shotgun, 51 under center.
All right.
But yet, think about that for a minute. 303 out of the gun, 51 under center.
Okay.
So they're a shotgun offense.
No question.
Okay, but they're very good with their explosive plays and their shot plays with Wilson under center. I don't know what the percentage is of making big plays, but they make a lot of big pass plays down the field off play action with Wilson under center.
So heavy shotgun runs with Chris Carson. Heavy under center pass play in terms of their explosive plays.
In terms of
under center,
percentage of explosive plays, not in terms of percentage of dropbacks. Right. Percentage of explosive plays.
Interesting. So I think from that now you kind of look at that and say, okay, if you're the Eagles defense, you kind of know that profile. So now when they go under center, if it's a shot area of the field, we'll say between the 40s, if it's that kind of down and distance scenario, you got to be ready. The alarm bells have to be going off in your head if you're the Eagles secondary.
Without question. The other thing that they do a lot of, and I think they're the second highest percentage in the league, and it's like 18%, is 6 offensive line personnel. And they don't just run out of it.
I didn't know that it was that high. I did notice it. I didn't realize it was that
very high.
Interesting.
I think there's only one other team that's higher.
Chicago, I guess.
Might be Pittsburgh with Zach Banner.
I haven't watched Pittsburgh at all.
But a lot of 6 O-line personnel with George Fant as the 6th offensive lineman. And as I said, they don't just run out of it. Everybody thinks big guys, big heavy guys.
Right,
the big boys come in, you run the ball. They'll throw out of that, and they'll pass protect with that.
Interesting. It's big shot play offense. I think from an explosive play standpoint, I'm pretty sure they're number 1 in the league. Here's the stat. Actually, a little bit lower than I would have thought. Okay, so 20-plus completions. So completions of 20-plus yards.
Yes.
They're tied for 7th, which is not bad. You know what it is, though? It's the deep shot plays.
Deep shots.
So Russell Wilson right now is 26 of 52 on throws that travel 20-plus in the air. So 50%.
That is phenomenal.
7 touchdowns, no picks.
That is phenomenal, 50%.
26 completions, number 1 in the league. 135.4 quarterback rating, number 1 in the league.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think he leads the NFL in red zone touchdown passes.
I
think he has 18.
might be able to tell you that, sir.
I think he has 18.
I couldn't tell you. I don't have that number. I will say that their red zone quarterback rating is 25th in the league, but the touchdown, I don't have that.
I believe that. I could be wrong.
Inside the 30, he's got 20 touchdowns inside the 30 passing, and that is most in the NFL. So that would carry through for the red zone. That would be my guess.
Yeah. So there, and then the other part you have to speak about, of course, is his second reaction improvisational ability, which places great demands on your defense. And I'm very curious to see how Jim Schwartz deals with that.
Yeah.
Because now you get into, how do you want to rush the quarterback? Are you going to use a spy? Are you going to play more zone than man? The Eagles have been playing more man lately. What is your approach going to be? Because the last thing you can have happen in this game, and it'll happen, but it can't happen 8 times, is if it's 3rd and 9, he runs around either and runs for a first down or then hits a 24-yard completion. You can't let that happen to the point where it impacts the game in a meaningful way.
I was listening to an interview done with Daniel Jeremiah on the Move the Sticks podcast.
Right.
He had Jake Heaps on the show.
Oh, yeah,
Jake
he's up in Seattle.
Yeah, and he was he's been Russell's private quarterback coach, and has been around for a long time.
Big time recruit, as I recall.
He was number 1 quarterback in the country coming out of high school.
Didn't quite work out.
Right, BYU then Kansas.
Yeah.
So he talked about Russell's legs and talked about his second reaction plays and said, he's not on early down, 1st and 10, 2nd and 5. Those aren't the ones where he's looking to make those plays.
No, it's 3rd down.
3rd and long, red zone. That's where you're like, all right, we got to watch out for his ability to make plays with his feet.
And he does something better than anyone I've ever seen that you would never teach. And you know what that is?
Thrown across your body.
No. He drops his eyes to look at the rush and then brings them back up and refocuses and makes throws.
Yeah.
That for for 99.9% of quarterbacks, it is a cardinal sin to drop your eyes and read the rush and look at the rush. He does that and then has this remarkable ability to bring them back up and refocus and make throws.
It's almost like LaShawn McCoy's running style when he was at his peak here in Philly, where you'd say like, Shady, like the run's supposed to go to the left. Why are you stopping and then running 6 yards in reverse and going back to the right? Oh, now it's a 25
yards later you go, nice run.
A nice run. Exactly.
No,
right.
but you know this. You never.
Yeah.
I mean, when we evaluate quarterbacks, when we're watching college guys or whatever, if you see guys drop their eyes, that's a negative check.
No question.
That is not a positive.
Right. Well, I mean, that's early in his career when Russell Wilson would do that. Like he's still doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
He's still doing it, and he's still making big plays, and it's been long enough now that that's part of his game.
So now I've just accepted that he's special in that regard.
Yeah.
You would never teach it, but he can do it.
Right. It's an area certainly, where he can hurt you, and that's the thing is, I was looking at some of their big plays. Yeah, there are those scripted shot plays where they go play action and it's max protection and extra O-lineman and 2 or 3 receiver routes. But there are a lot of other plays where he drops his eyes, he scrambles, he runs around, and boom, hits DK Metcalf for 38 yards. Oh, he hits Tyler Lockett for 42 yards. I mean, that's a big part of what they do.
And it's funny you just mentioned their names because both those guys can run. See, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's not just Russell Wilson. Metcalf can run, and he's shown that in his brief time in the NFL. And Lockett, we know what Lockett is. And even some of their sort of secondary receivers. David Moore is a big guy who can run. Even a guy who's been around the league a bit now, Jerron Brown, makes catches for them, critical catches. Malik Turner.
Josh Gordon.
Yeah, he's there now. Well, and he played his first game, and I think he played close to 30 snaps. Hey, he could play 50 snaps.
Couple slants. And
this week, we don't know.
Right. Both Lockett and Metcalf both rank in the top 7 in the NFL right now in terms of catches of 20-plus where they're catching the ball downfield, so the deep ball throws.
I mean, Metcalf's a pretty impressive specimen now.
Yeah, I mean, he had his flaws coming out, and that's why he fell. And obviously the medical was also a big deal.
But he's used in the way he's used to play to his strengths.
Exactly. They do a good job of doing that. Yes. And that goes to when we talked about with Clowney. We've talked about it with all these guys. They do that's coaching.
It's coaching.
Yes, no question. It's going to be a big test. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Eagles try and match up to them from an offensive standpoint. Obviously, look, number one, you have to stop. We say this all the time. You have to stop the run, make them one-dimensional. But then you got to make sure your coverage is tight back.
And that automatically doesn't mean you stop them, but
Yes.
you have to at least try to do that.
The Eagles have been, and I think that, there's obviously, I think Eagles fans kind of have their thoughts on what this Eagles secondary is. And I think the NFL Matchup Twitter account actually put it out earlier on Monday. In terms of big plays allowed, Eagles are 7th.
Right.
They're not giving up big plays in chunks.
But this is a little different animal here.
This is a big play offense.
This is a little different animal, yes.
That's going to be the big test in this game. Well, Greg, looking forward to watching this game on Sunday afternoon now. Remember, not Sunday night game as it was initially scripted to be, but Sunday, 1 o'clock, Lincoln Financial Field. We'll be breaking it down next Monday night.
That is correct.
Right here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. Great stuff from Greg, and you can follow him on Twitter just like I do, at Greg Cosell. And while you're at it, I'm at FDuffy3. That's where I post all the podcasts I'm a part of and all of our X's and O's content that we produce over here at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. And you know how much I appreciate all of you who go and promote our podcast on any form of social media. But the number one way to promote the show, to help us out, is to go into Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, wherever you listen, leave us a rating and leave us a comment. And I want to give a shout out to a couple of people who did just that over the last couple of weeks. Philly Eric went on Apple Podcasts, left a 5-star review saying, checking in from LA, saying how much they love the show and listen each and every week. So Eric, thank you very much. James080 left a 5-star review, longtime listener who loves the show. James, thanks so much for all of your listenership over the course of the last few years. And then lastly, CD from ND, 5-star review. Love listening to the breakdowns of the games and how it doesn't come across as scripted during my chats with Greg Cosell, and that's because they are not scripted. Literally, Greg walks in and we sit down and we talk about what we saw on film, and then we move on. So really appreciate all of you guys out there for your help, whether you listen to the show each week and you haven't done it yet. Hey, if you haven't, just go give us a little bit of extra love wherever you listen. Leave us a rating, leave us a comment. All right, let's get to the end of the show now. It's time for some scouting report on Poona Ford.
Dim those lights. We're headed to the film room for the scouting report.
All right, so Poona Ford, very divisive player in 2018, coming out of the University of Texas. 1.5-year starter for the Longhorns. It was his first year playing for Todd Orlando in that 3-man front down there. The big thing with this kid, and he played as the nose tackle in their 3-man front, but he was very undersized, 5'11 and 5'8", shorter than any defensive tackle drafted in over a decade. So this guy was shorter. We talk all the time about undersized defensive tackles. That's okay. Look at Aaron Donald and Grady Jarrett and Geno Atkins and Sheldon Rankins, Mike Daniels, that whole list of players. He was smaller, or I should say he was shorter than all of those guys. So that was a big reason why, honestly, even though he was the defensive lineman of the year in the Big 12, even though he was first team all-conference, he was not invited to the combine and he was not drafted. I was pretty high on him overall. I think I had him in the top 15 defensive tackles for me going into that draft. But let me just go through what I saw from him on film. Pretty athletic kid, quick first step, short area burst to make plays on the other side of the line. Definitely had the ability to win off the ball as a gap shooter in the middle of a defense. As a pass rusher, kind of a limited array of moves, but did show the ability to win with a decent bull rush, a decent speed move to kind of win high side and get into the backfield. Loved his play recognition skills, especially against the screen. I thought he saw things pretty quickly. Natural leverage in the run game. Tried to stay square to the line of scrimmage, and he showed the ability to kind of drop his weight when it was needed and hold his point at the point of attack as a run defender. Really worked hard to stay in his gaps on perimeter runs and was really cognizant of what his role was in the run fit. And he chased the action really well and could make plays outside the numbers. So I liked what I saw from him in pursuit. From a negative standpoint, I was worried about his play strength. I thought that he would need some time in an NFL weight program. Did get obliterated at times at the point of attack in college, but overall, I thought that he did hold up pretty well. There were just a couple of bad snaps on tape that I think some people just could not get past. There were times where he struggled to collapse the pocket as a bull rusher, not a pure stack and shed type of guy, and he did get a little bit worn down, I thought, late in games, so that was a little bit of a concern as well. But overall, while I didn't see a pure 3-down player in the NFL, which he's obviously turned into. I thought he could impact the game on passing downs. I liked him a little bit more in a rotational role, probably more as a third defensive tackle, but he could potentially be a low-end starter at a 3 technique or even as a nose tackle in a 4-3 scheme. I liked him best in a one-gap system in the NFL, and he has turned into a starting nose tackle, so he plays inside between the center and the guard. He's, again, a little bit undersized, so it's going to be an interesting matchup there between both he and Jason Kelsey in this game. He's a much different player than what Jason Kelsey saw last week with Danny Shelton, who's a big, hulking, pure two-gap nose tackle. That's not Poona Ford, so it's going to be a much more of an interesting matchup here between both Kelsey and Ford. I liked Ford a lot. I think the lesson that a lot of people learned was, okay, is he going to be an exception to the rule, or is he going to kind of fall in line with some of these other severely undersized defensive linemen that we've seen? Guys like Aaron Donald and Grady Jarrett, I said that list earlier, they've been more the exception than the rule when you look at guys of that body type. And that isn't just for defensive tackles. This goes across the board. Jason Kelsey, honestly, coming out of Cincinnati was the same way. If you're going to bet on a lack of size, you need them to be exceptional in other areas. Obviously, Kelsey is an exceptional athlete. While Poona Ford tested pretty well at his pro day, it wasn't otherworldly, and I think a lot of people were kind of scared off by that. He went undrafted and ended up making the Seahawks, was a role player for them a year ago, and has now turned into a starter. So a very interesting success story from that team, and something certainly will be on the minds of a lot of people now. Whenever you see an undersized defensive tackle in the recent future, I think a lot of people will be pointing to Poona Ford and how they can't afford to make the same mistake twice. All right, excellent stuff this week. Really appreciate Greg Cosell, as always, joining us here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. For everybody here at the NovaCare Complex, I'm Fran Duffy. We will talk to you next week.